Listen, I get it. I went to school. There were plenty of teachers I wanted to just kill.
There are movies I've seen once that I would never want to see again. There are movies I've seen that are very forgettable and never really think about them ever again. And then there are movies I liked the first time I saw them and will eventually come back months, even years later, and watch them again and again. Disturbia is one of those films. With a budget of $20 million, Disturbia made $118 million at the box office. Not only was the film successful in theaters, but it was also universally liked by the audience. It is now sitting at 70% on Rotten Tomatoes by movie critics, and the audience score is at 77%. 2007 was a great year overall for horror movies. We had The Strangers, 30 Days of Night, Dead Silence, and many more films that will stand the test of time. Disturbia was one of those movies as well. I used to watch Shia LaBeouf on the Even Stevens show all the time on Disney Channel when I was young. I found Shia hilarious on the show and immediately became a fan of his for his work. I know right then and there that I was going to watch any movie that he came out on. Before actually seeing Disturbia, I saw movies like Hounded, Holes. They even made a Even Stevens movie, and also iRobot. Disturbia was the first movie I saw of his where he played the lead character in a horror movie. The film had its funny and its serious moments. At the time, I had no clue what the word Disturbia meant. All I really knew that Shia LaBeouf was in this film, and I just wanted to see it. I was around 11 or so when I first saw Disturbia. The film didn't really scare me as a kid. It was just keeping me at the edge of my seat. And I was wondering if the main characters were going to survive or not. With a film that majorly takes place in this one house, the story for the film was very entertaining. A troubled high school student named Kale becomes convinced he is living next door to a wanted serial killer. While this was going on, Kale, Shia LaBeouf's character, is put on house arrest for punching his Spanish teacher. The reason why he punched his teacher was because he mentioned his dead father. Both Kale and his dad ended up in a car crash, and only Kale made it out alive. Kale was off to a 3-month vacation from school, but now he was stuck in his house and wasn't able to leave. If he did, then he would have gone to jail. The tracking device was strapped to his ankle and he wasn't able to take it off. While he was stuck in his house, he was limited to the things he could do. Playing Ghost Recon online with friends, listening to music on iTunes, and even watching TV were off limits. Since he had all the time in the world, Kale instead focused on learning his neighbors' routines. There were these kids who messed with Kale. They also happened to be his neighbors. Kale noticed that they watched movies that they weren't supposed to, and they hid it from their mom as well. They filled a bag with turd and made a fire out of it. Kale stopped the fire by stepping on the bag, but he didn't realize it was covered in shit. Because of them, Kale was then put in cuffs by the cop that was nearby because the alarm started to go off on the ankle device since he'd started chasing the kids. While he was getting handcuffed, he noticed a girl that had just moved in, staring at him. He had a crush on the next door neighbor and wanted to get to know her. It didn't take Kale long to get to know her, and they hit it off very well. And the last person that Kale started to learn the routine was Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner seemed like he was a peaceful man that liked his privacy. He didn't seem like he didn't want any trouble with anyone. Around the 30-minute mark of the movie, the news channel was throwing out hints to Kale that there was a killer going around town kidnapping women and killing them. One news mentioned that a 33-year-old Patricia Williams might have been a victim of kidnapping, and they also released more news saying that the person who took Patricia Williams was driving a 1960s Ford Mustang, which may have been dented on the left side. Kale started to get suspicious of his neighbor, Mr. Turner, because he had a Mustang. It wasn't any Mustang though. It was the same Mustang the news reporter was describing as well. The next day, he saw a newspaper again talking about Patricia Williams. Kale got his friend Ronnie involved so he can help him figure it out if Mr. Turner had anything to do with the kidnapping. As both Kale and Ronnie dig further into the kidnapping, they now found out that the police are now saying that the circumstances surrounding Patricia Williams' disappearance are similar to several murder kidnappings in Austin 3 years ago. All the women that were kidnapped were redheads. The police didn't catch the guy, but the police found 7 female bodies in a house a year after the killer abandoned the property. There was no way of IDing whoever lived on the house because he used a fake name and probably a P.O. box because no mail was ever delivered to the house. All of these things could have easily been missed in the movie if you weren't listening to what Ronnie was saying. Ashley, the next door neighbor of Kale, decided to go to his house. Kale asked her if she needed to call someone, but then she stated that she preferred to be stranded for some time, meaning that she just wanted to hang out with the guys. A minute later, Ashley found Kale's binoculars and she asked both Ronnie and him if they were spying on the neighbors, without trying to give themselves away that they were looking at her through the binoculars. They said they were only spying on Mr. Turner because of the dented Mustang Kale saw the night before. It turns out Mr. Turner no longer had the dent in his Mustang, and the only lead that they now had was that Mr. Turner was a collector of skulls, particularly the Longhorns he had in his garage. Which state is famous for Longhorns? Texas. And which state is the killer from? Texas. Now that they had a lead, Ashley was now a part of the group on finding out if Mr. Turner is actually the killer or not. Ashley did more research on the murders from Texas and found out that the bodies were twisted and jammed into the basement walls. One girl died from blunt trauma, which was caused from blows to the head and face. They were dealing with someone who had no remorse for the dead and who was also a psychopath. On that night, Turner brought a redhead to his house. Kale and Ashley took a closer look with their cameras to see if Mr. Turner was getting any ideas of Ashley murdering. They noticed Mr. Turner pulling a knife out, and both Kale and Ashley started to get worried for the lady's safety. They thought that they were about to witness a murder, but it turns out that he was just ripping out the price tag on the girl's dress. Shortly after, Ashley's mom called her asking where she was and that she should get home. Kale walked her minutes later to her house. Shortly after Ashley left, he heard the lady that was with Turner crying for help. Turner was chasing her around his house, and Kale immediately tried to get a photo for evidence. The flash gave Kale away. He then noticed that Turner was now looking at his direction. Turner knew that he was being watched, and in his mind, he had to do something about it, or else he would have risked being caught. Kale got a call from Ronnie asking him how it went with Ashley, but Kale was terrified of what he just witnessed. Ronnie told Kale to calm down, and then that's when Kale noticed that the redhead, who was supposedly being chased by Turner, left his house, or so he thought. Turner already knew that he was being watched by his next door neighbor, and so he became friends with Kale's mom. Kale was shocked to see Turner inside his house, but the reason being he was in there was because Turner helped Kale's mom with a flat tire. Turner noticed the ankle device Kale was wearing and asked him what did he do to get the device. Kale angrily told him that he punched his teacher, hoping that would make Turner back away from him and his mom. When Kale's mom left to go get some missing groceries from the car, both him and Turner were left alone for a moment. Turner mentioned to Kale that when he was in school, there were times at school where he wanted to kill his teachers. That left Kale thinking for the rest of the day. He told Ashley about what happened, but then she came into a conclusion that the guy just likes his mom because she is a catch. Around 10 minutes later in the movie, while Kale and Ashley were making out, Ashley heard that Mr. Turner was moving something very heavy. She also noticed that it was leaving stains of blood everywhere outside Turner's house. It was a no-brainer that there was a dead body inside the bag, and so the next day, Kale and Ashley made their mission on sneaking into Mr. Turner's garage to find out if there was really a human body inside the blue bag they saw. While Turner was away shovel shopping, Kale and Ronnie tried their best to break into his garage. Ashley lost sight of Turner because she ran into a friend from school at the store. She thought that Turner was on the way to his house, but it turns out Turner just wanted to chat with Ashley.